What's up everybody, Rob Ferretti here, and today I'm going to tell you about cars you should run away from. And salvage title cars are not necessarily something you have to worry about, but flood damage cars are the worst. And when I say flood damage cars are the worst, they are so unpredictable. You can have, as you saw with the Evo, we had sludge in the motor. You have, like, just because, especially if it doesn't run, you can really be screwed. You could have mold issues, you can have computer issues, wiring issues, electrical and wiring issues. You could be chasing those forever. And that's one of the biggest problems you're gonna run into with a salvage car. So if you're gonna buy a flood damage car, you better buy it to turn it into a race car, because you're gonna wanna gut it and just use the shell, and you're gonna wanna price it accordingly. Now, what made me think about this? Well, simply the hurricane that just hit down in Texas, and now there's a hurricane barreling down, or may even be in Miami by now. And I was looking, and you see these people, like here's, I saw Vipers out in the flooded street. I saw all these cool cars flooded out, which to me just bothers me, because a tornado I get, right? Tornado comes out of nowhere, an earthquake, who knows, like, didn't see that one coming. Carjacking, car theft, fire. You know a hurricane's coming, and it may, like, hey, a hurricane may come to you in a couple of weeks. Like, it's not like trees fell on them. We're talking flood damage. That's the problem I have with hurricanes, is that the flooding is what really screws people up. Why don't you move your car? When Hurricane Sandy was coming to New York, what did I do? I lived in Edgewater, New Jersey. It was on the water, like on the Hudson River. I moved my cars. I moved them inland. I moved them up to higher ground, just so I don't run into any issues with potential flooding. And these aren't even cars that are like, that's my baby. It just, I don't want to deal with making an insurance claim. And I think a lot of people leave the cars there and want the cars to get flooded out because they want to make the insurance claim. And you see the guy with the garage, he had his 458 Scuderias, 4GT. You saw those cars get flooded out. There is no reason a guy with means like that and cars like that should not have those cars secure somehow. And in that video, he had lifts in the garage. He didn't show what was on top of the lifts, and I only could hope that there were cars on top of the lifts, and it wasn't like, yeah, I'll just leave them on the ground, let them flood out and make the insurance money. That could be a product of, unfortunately, the market being in a bubble, where people are into the cars for too much. They have an agreed upon value, so when the floods done come, you get those things totaled out and you get the money that you want for those cars. That's really tough, and I don't want to make the accusation against that specific guy. This is just the art that I'm seeing on the internet. But there was a guy that I think 99% is insurance fraud. There was a person with a Ferrari California, and the Ferrari California was stopped in the middle of the flood, and the rear bumper was ripped off. Rear bumpers don't rip off if you're casually wading through water. Rear bumpers rip off if you go ripping into water. So this guy had every intention of totaling out his car by driving it quickly into the water so he could flood out. That's not cool, and hopefully the insurance company catches it. I don't know if they'll be able to prove it or not, but that's sort of something you have to watch out for. That's why these exotic cars, and exotic cars have such a value, they all get salvaged or rebuilt or repaired in some way, shape, or form. But what I would recommend doing, and there was one last one, 488 Spider. Somebody sent me one. This got to be the first totaled one, which it's not. There were other totaled ones. But the interior of the car covered in mud and everything like that, first off, come on, guys. Like, if you have a nice car, if you can afford a nice car, if you have 4 or 5 days notice that a hurricane may come to you, you could safeguard your property. You could safeguard your assets. I understand people that have a family and they're just loading up as much shit into their minivan as they can and they just get out of Dodge. But if a hurricane was coming this way and I wasn't like subject to being flooded, even if I thought it was a remote possibility, I'd get my stuff secured. The guy with the BMW, perfect example. He had a garage full of like E36s, and he like made these lifts with blocks and these cars just above the waterline. He didn't know where the waterline was going to be. He got very lucky, but he took the initiative to save his property instead of just saying, screw it, I'll just make an insurance claim. And that sucks. The insurance companies get killed here, and trust me, nobody feels bad for insurance companies. They're eating pretty good 99 out of 100 years, but at the end of the day, it's a dirty way of going about things, and now you're dumping the burden on somebody else. Instead of just selling your car because you don't want it, now all of these cars, and even not even exotic cars, regular cars, some people may think they have flood insurance, but you know what? Oh, you only have flood insurance if a pipe breaks or something like that. You don't have groundwater flooding, so you're not covered under this circumstance. And now you got a guy who's like, well, shit, now my car is worthless. They're going to let it dry off. They're going to clean it up as best they can. They're going to kick the thing down the road to the next guy. So that car may not even be branded as a salvage title car or a flood car. That's something you run into too. Water is the worst because the evidence of the water can disappear and not sneak up on you until later on. So something to keep in mind. I would stay away from all cars from southern Texas and even probably southern Florida or whatever's about to get hit with the hurricane here for a good year or two. And you've had this, like, when there's money to be made and people to be deceived, oh, a car dealer would never lie to me. Yes, they would. And a lot of people will see these cars, they'll go scoop them up dirt cheap because they know they're worthless and people are vulnerable to try to get rid of them, and insurance companies are trying to get rid of them. They're not going to disclose everything to you. Oh yeah, it was in the flood. It's marked a flood car, but definitely wasn't flooded. Like, it was up to the wheels and tires. Like, you're going to get stuff like that. I would just stay away from all those cars just to be safe. If you're going to go that route, do your homework, do a solid inspection. And when I say a solid inspection, pull up the carpets, look for any evidence of mold, look for any evidence of moisture in the carpets, anything like that. You're going to have to assume that the electronics could be shot. You're going to want to check the wiring and the pins in some of the wiring to see if any of that ever got any evidence of water at all. You're going to want to run and stay away from those cars. Water cars, flood cars, bent frame cars, all cars you sort of want to stay away from. But you're going to see a lot of them coming on the market and a lot of deals that may be too good to be true. Even on a Ford GT, I guarantee that Ford GT in that video that was now going to be salvaged out is not going to be coming up and you're going to be like, oh cool, there's that Ford GT for $75,000. Somebody's going to be trying to get $230,000, $240,000, $250,000, maybe even represented it as perfect and try to get $300,000, $400,000 for it. I don't know the details on the car, but just something to be aware of. You're going to buy a car from anywhere down in South Texas, South Florida, anywhere in that like lower Gulf Coast region. Do your homework, make sure you're covered. Flood cars are the worst and you want to be careful about that. If you're making a race car, that's one thing. Other than that, make sure you're paying the right price and you're factoring in potential computers, full wiring harnesses, and anything that may be moldy or fucked to begin with. Thank you for watching, guys. If you have any other comments, questions about this, feel free, drop them in the comments like you always do. Catch you next time.